Welcome guys, and thank you for joining us on this wonderful sunny Monday morning here in Derbyshire. We have just arrived at White Peak Distillery and we have got so much in stock for you today. We've been welcomed down here by the founders, Max and Claire, who we're going to meet shortly to find out a little bit about the brands that they are creating. However, first up, we're meeting with the Distillery Manager, Dave. He's going to tell us not only about the single malt English whiskey that they're making, but also the wonderful rum and gin that they're creating here at White Peak. Let's get stuck in. So Dave, start of the tour here at White Peak. Tell us.
We'll go and have a look at the mill. That's where we start.
This is a bit of a newer age mill.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're all the same these days, but I mean, you can see how it works. It's basically a giant set of scales.
Yep.
We load the bag on the top, big screw inside there, takes it above the hopper, couple of rollers there, crushes all the barley for us. So we get unpeated stuff from Chris Maltings in Norfolk, and we get the peated stuff from Munton's Malt as well.
Lovely, okay,
so
cool.
we do make a slightly peated whiskey here, which is not very common for English whiskey, but we all like peated whiskey, so that's why.
And what sort of output are you looking at peated-wise?
It goes into the process at 10 ppm,
Okay.
which puts us around the same level as Highland Park, Springbank, that sort of thing. So just a
And of
slightly
the
relaxed
total output, how much of that would be peated?
all of our whiskey is peated.
Everything
So
is even a little bit peated.
Every
okay.
release so far has been peated.
All right, cool. Very good.
So I'll just point some of this out. So one of the things that is slightly unique for us is we use brewer's yeast. So this is what it looks like. We actually get it live. So this is from a brewery up the road in Bakewell called Thornbridge.
Okay.
And it's already been used once to make one of their IPAs. We know exactly what strain of yeast that is.
Yeah.
We've tried some in reserve,
Right.
just in case that brewery disappears overnight, which
Okay.
probably, isn't going to happen. But
It's always good to know you've got a backup.
we've tried it on its own, and we've tried the Thornbridge stuff, and the Thornbridge stuff is much better. So the fact that it's been used does add an awful lot of flavour, which is really good.
And why was it then that you wanted to separate yourselves from most distilleries using a brewer's yeast? What is it that what was the thought process there at the beginning?
Well, we're in Derbyshire, lots of brewing heritage around here.
Right.
And it's a
Use what you've got good access to.
Yeah, it's
Why
a very
not?
traditional way of doing it. Before all the science caught up when making whiskey, distilleries and breweries, there used to be this relationship, bottle of whiskey, bucket of yeast. They control their fermentations very well because they need to keep some sugar in the beer and things like that. So at the end of their brewing process, the yeast is always alive, so they can just scoop out of one vat, just keep it going.
Rolling into the next.
We let our fermentations rip. We get all the sugar converted as possible.
Yes.
And it just means at the end it gets too hot and there's too much alcohol. Yeast always dies, so we always need a fresh batch. So it's a nice relationship there.
Fantastic.
And it doesn't happen so much these days because the science has caught up. Everybody uses these sort of bread yeasts that they've got a better sort of resistance to high temperatures, and they produce more alcohol basically. So we use a bit of both. And it's just nice to use a traditional method, and it's nice that it makes a difference.
Like you say, one hand washes the other, get involved with the community, bring everyone together.
Yeah, exactly.
Very
It's
cool.
a nice thing.
All right, lovely.
Right, we'll head up. So this is our mash tun. It's actually a semi-lauter tun, which means we can do the infusion mash, which you normally see, and we've got the lauter arm going around there just to sort of increase all the sugar we can extract.
Absolutely.
That's quite a good thing.
Smells yummy.
So up here we've got our fermentation. So we've mashed today. We've run off into one of our washbacks over here. We do actually use some of these for rum fermentation, so that's what's going on in there at the moment.
Okay.
It's really nice making rum. It wasn't originally part of the plan of the distillery to make rum, so gin was always part of the sort of plan.
Right, to sort of pay the way for the whiskey, or very much you had a focus on gin as well?
The main job of the gin is just to let people know we're here originally. We do like making gin, we're going to keep making gin.
Yep.
And, it takes 3 years at least to age a whiskey.
Get a product out to the shelf the same day with gin, that's the thing.
It opens up routes to businesses and things like that, and it gets people down here, lets them aware of what we're doing.
Yep.
It also keeps our brains ticking over as well. It's just nice to produce stuff all the time. So we'll go and have a look at our whiskey fermentations. We do actually do very long fermentations for an industry standard anyway. So as you know, a whiskey, we're going to get all the alcohol we're going to get after about 48 hours in the vats. We do 6-day fermentations here, so it's in there 4 days longer than it needs to be.
Wow.
And we leave the lids open all the time, so it's always open to the elements. So we've got.
Why is that? What's the thought process there?
All the wild yeast, local bacteria, stuff like that. that all has an impact on our fermentations.
Okay.
So in this extra 4 days, the wash is essentially going stale. You're getting this buildup of bacteria. The pH drops, so we're getting lots of acid in there.
Okay.
Acid, when combined with alcohol, when combined with heat from our stills and the copper in the stills, that helps form esters. So the longer we leave it in there, the more esters we get,
Yep.
the nicer, fruitier, sweeter tasting new make spirit we get.
Fantastic.
And that has a huge impact on our whiskey. We set out right from the beginning to make a whiskey that doesn't require 12 to 15 years in a cask before it tastes any good.
Right.
So we make decisions like this, the brewer's yeast, 6-day fermentations, shapes of our still. It's all down to encourage a really smooth, nice new make spirit that won't require so long in a cask.
Fantastic.
That's the theory anyway.
Very well thought through. No, absolutely. I'm looking forward to trying it now. You're getting me thirsty. And how big are these stills out of interest now?
So the wash still's 3,000 litres.
Okay.
Spirit still's about 1,800 litres, sorry.
Okay.
You can see they're different shapes. We've got this big bulbous shape here. That basically increases the surface area of the still. You get more copper contact, more reflux, pulls more sulfur out. That's something to be encouraged.
They're not terribly tall stills though. So do you have quite an oily product or not really?
Actually, they don't look very tall, but the necks are quite long for the actual size of the pot.
For the base of it, right, okay.
So, yeah, the line arms on the top are a good thing to look at. So on day one, the wash still, the line arm is actually downhill to the condenser. So as soon as the vapor gets to the top, it's very easy to get there. On day two, if you look, it's actually uphill all the way.
But not much now. What do you know what the degrees are?
It's a 3-degree angle.
Okay, 3
It's a good
degrees.
question.
Not much in it, but it's going to make that spirit work that much harder.
Exactly.
The thicker spirit dropping off, that lighter, fruitier spirit that you're working so hard to get.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to end up with at the end product.
And the line arm, right up until a few weeks before they were manufactured, they were about 1 meter shorter. They were just thought, stick another meter on, get a bit more copper contact, get a bit more reflux, get that fruitier spirit.
Sorry, you decided this a week before they were put in?
Pretty much,
I love it, Dave. You sound like a man just like me.
All right, do you want to see the maturation?
Please, yeah, let's go on, absolutely. Now this is lovely. Going straight in the same building, maturation warehouse.
I mean, that is one of the biggest positives we've got here is that we've got enough space to store all of our casks on site.
Yeah.
So, this is our lower dunnage. This is the first barrel store we've got. There's about 150 casks in here at the moment.
Okay.
Because we're at the age we're pulling them out, which is quite a nice thing.
Yeah.
Upstairs there's another 200.
Okay.
And we've just taken on, we've got, next door is where they used to produce the wire. So to make wire, you pull hot metal through small hoots.
Cool.
So you need a really long space. So I'll show you in a little bit, and we're taking portions of that room on as and when we need for barrel storage. So
fantastic.
We've filled about 1,800 casks so far, so we're doing quite well. And the fact that we can do it all on site, as you know, lots of distilleries, as soon as they've filled a cask, goes on a lorry, goes to a central warehouse, or it joins lots of whiskey from other distilleries. But things like humidity, temperature have a huge impact on maturation. So the fact that we can control it for its entire life just makes it even more our product. So down here, we're actually below the road, so it's quite cool down here. Upstairs is above the road, so in the winter time, it's about 5 degrees. In the summertime, it can get to about 10 degrees warmer upstairs. So
do you have a plan as to what casks you're going to be putting up there, what it is you want to sort of play around with?
Yeah, so in the early days, we were just filling and stacking and storing.
Yep.
But obviously, now we've had a chance to try it as the maturation goes on. We know exactly what's happening upstairs. So
it's fascinating to see how seemingly such small changes in location can make such a drastic difference in the product, right?
Exactly, yeah. So upstairs, we're probably going to reserve that for cask finishes and things like that.
Okay.
Just because
speed the whole process up.
I mean, in the summertime, you just get so much flavour from the wood upstairs.
For sure.
It's good. Even things like casks, we fill loads of different types of casks. We've got lots of ex-bourbon barrels. We've got some of these STR casks as well.
Yep.
I'm sure you probably know shave toasted and recharred.
Yeah, absolutely. French barriques?
These are actually, they've had Rioja in them, so Spanish.
Spanish, okay, cool.
But they do get refurbished for us, and we do have things changed. So this one that we're looking at here, that's entirely American oak. It's got a char level of 3.
Cool.
This one is American, and this one's American oak body with French oak heads, and has a char level of 2. So you get a completely different, more of a spicy sort of flavour from that one.
Yep.
And we've also filled some virgin oak. We've also filled some port. some Moscatel, some Madeira, things like that.
Okay.
They're sort of more recent ones, but yeah, so we've got lots of stuff to play with.
But the majority of your stuff that's going to be going out into the shelves will be bourbon to sort of allow that distillery character to shine through, or is it very much going to be changing moving forward? You'll have different expressions.
Second one, yeah, very much it's changing.
Cool.
So we know the bourbon barrels have already been used once before. They do require a little bit longer.
Yep.
But without giving too much away, our releases this year, we are starting to creep more bourbon in there, just because it's got more of that character and they're really sort of coming to life a bit as well.
Cool.
Obviously, lots of flavour really early on with these bourbon barrels. Just take a little bit longer, but they're coming good now, which is really good. It's really exciting.
Cool. I love it.
I'll show you the other warehouse. Yeah, so each one of these sort of double stacks here, the dunnage, there's about 50 casks in each one. So
cool.
We're really motoring along.
Now, Dave, I'm sure lots of people at home have seen dunnage warehouses before. Obviously, predominantly, you see a warehouse, it's racked, you're going 8, 12 casks high. Dunnage warehouse is much more traditional. For people at home, though, may not appreciate, especially for you guys doing all the work here, when you want to get a cask at the bottom,
yeah,
you've got to take them all out, right?
Exactly.
So what's the process here with regards to what you're putting where, how you're stacking stuff up? Is it very much, again, along that sort of tasting, laying the sort of bourbon barrels down on the lower grounds, so the longer maturation and the STRs, etc., on the higher levels? What sort of process do you guys go through?
Yeah, so that is something that, again, we've sort of learned as we've come along.
Right.
So we did a port cask release last year.
Okay.
And those 2 port casks were buried right in the back corner on the bottom row over there. So
God, right.
It was a whole day to get them out. Nowadays, though, yeah, we try and forward plan as much as we can.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're limited on things like space, so we can only do our best. Generally, the oldest is on the bottom. What we've started doing over here on the other side, refill casks go on the bottom because they're going to take even longer. So that's sort of a way we're trying to manage that going forward.
Cool. But this is the thing. When you're tasting something delicious, there is every opportunity or every chance, that it has been dug out from the depths of a warehouse. It's taken a lot of time. So not only do you need to appreciate the time that's gone into making the whiskey, but also digging it out to get it into the bloody bottle. So definitely something to think about.
We are where we are because of the river. We knew we needed some water to cool the stills. The wireworks themselves used to use the river to cool their process.
So it was already tied in.
So it's already tied in. They used to extract thousands of litres every day, run it up to a reservoir at the top of the hill where they'd have like a couple of weeks worth. Obviously, we don't need that much water, so we've just managed to bodge the pipework a bit. So we are licensed to extract a certain amount every day and then put it back slightly warmer. So
fantastic.
Without that, we'd have to use electric chillers and cooling towers. So it's a real positive that we've got the river.
Definitely.
And it does make working here really nice.
Absolutely. Love it. Very cool. So guys, we are halfway through our tour here at White Peak, and it is amazing to see English whiskey distilleries doing things in such an interesting, unique way, really trying to put their own stamp on the map and get their brand out there. White Peak, very much focused on being a fruity, light, easygoing spirit. I'm very excited to try that now in a moment with Dave. We just had a little tour around their warehouse, looking at what they're putting out. Obviously, as Dave said earlier, pretty much all of the stuff that they're putting out at the moment is peated, a lot of bourbon barrels, but from the sounds of it, they've got some interesting cask maturations that they're going to be starting to release in the coming few years. Particularly later this year, some very interesting batches that you need to look out for. Not something that we can tell you about just yet, but definitely keep your eyes open. Now, just before we go over and start trying some of the new make, I wanted to point something out because normally when you're in the distilleries up in Scotland in particular, you're looking at the mill and you will see one of 2 names. You'll see the Porteous or Bobby mills. These are old school mills, companies that have actually gone out of business because they were so good at what they did. They made mills that would not break. And what was quite interesting when we came in, I noticed this mill, definitely not a Porteous or a Bobby mill. It's white, it's clean, it looks something very, very new age. And it's actually by a company called CTS Process. Can't say I've ever heard of them. I'm not sure I like them quite as much as the old school romantic Porteous Bobby mills. However, it's great to see how whiskey distillation, whiskey making is being upgraded. There is loads of new equipment, loads of new machinery. And I think based on what we've seen here today at White Peak, they're putting a lot of money in to make sure that they have got the highest tech equipment. They've got some really cool stuff so that they can make some absolutely amazing spirits. And remember, it's not just whiskey. They're making whiskey, but they're also making different styles of gin. And as we've just seen, rum as well. So lots going on here at White Peak. And now I'm going to try some of it. Thank you very much, Dave. Love a bit of cleric. Always a nice way to start a Monday. So as we were saying, light, fruity, estery, and as well, you can straight away you get that right on the nose.
I mean, our cut points are quite, for the actual spirit run, they're quite high in the run. So we run 15 minutes of 4 shots, and we actually cut to faints at 67, which is really high. So if we ran deeper than that, we'd get more of the malt character, but we quite like this light and fruity spirit that we're getting. Kind of suits a younger whiskey, I think.
As cleric goes, that's really fucking good. That's delicious. Surprisingly good, actually.
Yeah, you can get some new makes rough as anything, but
also a lot of new make, and I haven't tried a huge, I think I've actually only tried one White Peak Expression, so I'm really excited to try your finished product now. But a lot of new make doesn't taste anything like the finished product. And you struggle, or I do anyway, with certain things, struggle to pick out the flavors that are eventually developed. And so you have to think that a lot of the flavor is coming from the cask, right?
yeah.
But here there is a lot of flavor straight away.
I mean, our focus, on our tours, we quote regularly, you know, the theory is 2/3 of the flavor comes from the barrel. All that says to us is that what we do is 1/3 of the flavor. So that's an awful lot that we can mess around with and play with.
Definitely.
So that's very much the focus.
Now, what are you filling the casks at? Is this at a flat 63, 63 and a half sort of?
So we started industry standard 63.5.
Yep.
That is something we sort of reapproached quite a lot. We've found our bourbon barrels actually age better at 60. And the STR casks, we actually fill them at 70.
Wow.
Just because...
What percentage is this?
Oh, we've knocked it down a little bit, so it's not going to blow your head off. It's 55%.
I was going to say this is way too smooth. Okay, that makes a bit more sense then. That makes a little bit more sense as well.
So yeah, playing around with fill ABV is something we've done as well.
It's impressive.
Yeah, good.
Very impressive.
Glad you like it.
And you said 10 ppm.
10 ppm going into the process. So you obviously lose a bit through distillation and through maturation as well.
Of course, absolutely. Where are you sourcing your peat from? Is it mainland peat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be Scottish peat. It is Scottish
Sure.
peat. Yeah, I think it's just north of Aberdeen. It's from there. So
Okay. Yeah.
obviously where you get your peat from does have an impact on the peat flavour. And yeah, it's not the really medicinal, thick sort of Isla style peat you get.
No, but it's lovely. And again, for people who maybe aren't as keen on peat, it's a great introduction. We were having a chat about this recently on one of our podcast episodes. People are very closed-minded sometimes when it comes to peat because they were given a Lefroy or an Ardbeg or something straight off the bat. This is where you want to start with peat, right? You want to, dip your toe in, figure out what you like, and go on from there.
We do get plenty of people that they do come to us and say, I don't like peated whiskey, but I like yours. Yeah, so it is a nice thing.
Cool. Lovely. Dave, thank you so much for sharing this wonderful new make spirit with us. It is absolutely delicious. Guys, let's pop inside now, meet some more of the team, and learn a little bit more about the White Peak brand. Max, so lovely to meet you. Thank you very much for having us. Obviously, you're one of the founders here at White Peak. Just come off the back of your distillery tour with your distillery manager, Dave, who's an absolute gent. Really interesting to hear from him about how you're making your products and what goes into them. I wanted to understand from you guys a little bit about the branding, though, because obviously you're making 3 different products. You've got your whiskey, your rum, and your gin.
Yeah.
It's White Peak Distillery, but you've got different names on the products. Now, I didn't understand this before. We've just had a bit of a chat. It's fascinating. Tell us about Wireworks, why it's called Wireworks. What is it that sort of built this brand?
Yeah, so the distillery, as you now know, is based at a former Wireworks.
Yeah.
Dates back to the 1870s. They used to employ 500 people. They were innovators. They exported their product and know-how all around the world.
Amazing.
And they were a major part of this community in this area. And so when we first came down to look at this space, which needed enormous kind of regeneration back in 2015, 2016, initially it just felt like the right kind of place for a distillery. Just out here, as you've seen, is the River Derwent. And we just had a sense that this place had a story and a personality. And back then, we were really focused on trying to make a single malt whiskey that had some Derbyshire provenance, that was the best whiskey that we could envisage and we could make.
Lovely.
And we hadn't given an enormous amount of thought to sales and marketing and what's our brand going to be and how's it going to be positioned. We kind of had this almost naive view that if we make something really good, people will buy it.
Definitely.
So what that meant is that we had some time down here whilst we were making what we thought was great whiskey to think about exactly how we're going to position it out there. And the longer we were here, and that's still very much the case today, the more we just fell in love with this place and started to understand how important a part the former wireworks played in these communities. And so it became clear to us over a period of time that when we got to the point where we're going to put our whiskey out there, we should brand it as Wireworks.
Tied to the place.
Yeah, it's kind of, it just feels, it's in our DNA, and we just feel really kind of positively and strongly about the way this business used to be operated before we arrived. And it doesn't kind of inform a lot of our decisions today.
Right.
Things like we're making decisions on the basis of what's going to be good for this business in 50 years' time, not necessarily in our lifetime.
Yes. Making the hard choices, but the right choices.
Yes, definitely. And so that kind of legacy of this business that was successful, but also cared about its place in the world, became increasingly more important to us. And hence why, we've ended up with the Wireworks brand.
And like I say, before I came here today, I had no idea, it made no sense to me. Now I know. It really gives you a sense of place, sense of set and setting, a sense of the home that you guys have built here. You talk about the river, which is beautiful, but this old Victorian building?
Victorian, Edwardian, it's on the cusp.
Right, okay, it's stunning. Cool, so Max, just before we finish up here, one last question I have for you. Your bottles are stunning. Tell me a little bit about the design here, because they're very, very different to most products that you see on the shelves. So what went into the design of the bottle?
Yeah, so I'll tell you about it. I can't take too much kudos for this because it's mainly Claire's project, but
okay.
We're obviously hoping that we would be positioned in the premium luxury single malt category, and we felt that it was important for us to follow up on the effort we put into the whiskey with a great bottle.
Absolutely. Presentation is everything, right?
Yeah. And the other thing it gave us the opportunity to do is try and communicate the story of the Wireworks in the packaging for anyone that doesn't get the opportunity to come down here.
Right.
So this bottle was almost like a 15 to 18 month project, and the story of that is another discussion. But essentially, we wanted to celebrate where we are at the Wireworks. We wanted to kind of showcase some of that sort of engineered and considered approach that we have to whiskey making, and then also in the actual physical design, it's a metaphor for a cable unwinding, essentially.
Right.
Hence the detailing around the sides and the twist
up the top.
And
I love it.
It's the strands of a cable, and that hopefully gives people the opportunity to when they see a bottle, there's almost like that discovery moment when at some point they might realize what this represents.
Yes.
It looks beautiful, but also it's telling the story of where we're based.
Well, now that the cogs are finally ticked into place in my head and I understand it, I have, again, that much more appreciation for it. That's very, very cool. And again, very much stands out. It is a premium product. I've already tried some of your whiskey. It's delicious. So congratulations. Thank you so much for showing us around your wonderful distillery.
You're welcome.
We'll look forward to hearing lots more from you guys in the future.
Thank you.
Nice one, Max.